In a campaign I ran a few years back, the first adventuring party in decades had just managed to return back to the city safely, and this had inspired others to also begin exploring the unknown wilderness surrounding them. The next adventuring party was also made of 3-player characters. We had a goblin warlock named Lucky, who had just finished robbing a book from the Baroness's keep, titled Falzafir's Grimoire for the Villainously Inclined. He wanted to test out some of the spells housed within, and also hide from the guards for a little bit, so he quickly signed on to be an adventurer. Next we had Stygander, who after his last expedition had begun drawing up a map of the surrounding region, and was wondering about the road they'd spotted last session, and where it could potentially lead them. And lastly we had Fiona, a local inventor who'd just been released from prison after accidentally burning down a few buildings a couple years back. She'd heard about the promotion the tavern was offering for free room and board for adventurers, and without any other option decided to join the party as well. They all met within the tavern, and after a brief introduction, they quickly began their adventure. Last time I traveled outside of the walls, we found a road out a few turtle miles east. The plan is that once we get there, we'll follow the road north and map out as much as we can. That way we'll have a better idea of what's all going on out here in the forest. And more importantly, we'll also get free rooms at the tavern. Yeah, that too, I guess. Though remember, it's dangerous out here. Keep an eye out for any monsters or clockwork creatures or anything, alright? Soon the party found that the road turned into a large stone bridge crossing over a small river. However, just as they approached the bridge, they ran into their first encounter of the adventure. Approaching them from both sides of the path was a pack of small creatures. They looked like hideous hybrids of chickens and lizards, but with bat wings sprouting out of their backs. Stygander stepped forward with his weapon drawn, placing himself between the party and the swarm of cockatrices. Meanwhile, Fiona pulled out a bunch of scrap from her bag and began to tinker on something. However, Lucky decided to do something unique, and tried to abandon the party and flee into the woods. But he got caught by the cockatrices, and after a few bites and failed constitution saves, he turned to stone. Once Lucky was dealt with, the creatures swarmed towards Stygander, and while he was able to deal with them effectively at first, it wouldn't last for long. Then Fiona finished what she'd been crafting, a small contraption that exploded and shot a burst of horrific stench out of it. This drove all of the cockatrices to flee back into the woods, and the encounter was over. Fascinating. It'll take some fine-tuning, but something like that could potentially be an effective deterrent against most creatures with a strong sense of smell.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked and all, but I'm not so sure I want to use something that foul-smelling again.
While Stygander and Fiona were beginning to patch up their wounds, I informed the players that Lucky's petrification was only temporary, and would last exactly 24 hours. However, the next day, as they were nearing the 24-hour mark, the party ran into another encounter. Walking across the bridge from the north was a group of 4 metallic humanoid constructs moving in perfect unison. Stygander froze as he noticed that the clockwork in the front of the group was missing an arm. That was the entity who had killed the hobgoblin soldiers the party had found last episode. Stig grabbed Fiona and they tried to flee into the bushes to hide, but it was too late. They'd been spotted. Anomaly detected. Please state your name and location of residence. Knowing what these clockworks could do, Stig decided it would be best to just answer their request and hope they leave. I'm Stygander Halverson, and this is Fiona. We're both from Eserith. Eserith unknown. Define location. Coordinates. It's way up north from here, all the way in the mountains, you know? Though if you don't mind me asking, where are you from? Location logged. Our origin is the professor's workshop. Oh? And where's the professor's workshop? The professor will arrive in 25 Melton units. Great, well, we don't want to hold you up at all, so we'll just step aside and you can go get ready for their arrival or whatever it is you're doing. And with that, the clockworks continued on their way. Stygander kept his hand on the hilt of his blade, watching them until they were out of sight. Meanwhile, Fiona was furiously scribbling notes in her journal. The constructs had given her an idea. After another hour, Lucky's petrification ended and the party continued on their adventure. Most of the day passed uneventfully until suddenly they got hit by a freak snowstorm that just appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the fall. Yep, gotta love random encounter tables. The snowstorm was limiting their vision and they needed to find shelter fast. Luckily for them, just a few turtle miles ahead was a small tavern resting on the side of the road, and after a treacherous hour of walking through the storm, the party made it to the Poor Stag Inn. However, they weren't in the clear yet, because the inside of the tavern was a macabre scene, with broken tables and bloodstains all around the room. However, there were no dead bodies. The upstairs area was similar, with the doors broken off the hinges and a horned devil lurking in the dark. Luckily for the party, the fight was pretty easy and they killed the creature without a lot of trouble. More notable than the goat devil thing was the dead body in the room with it. The first dead body the party had actually found so far. I wonder how much money they have on them. Why is that everybody's first instinct when they see a corpse? Lucky didn't find any money on the body, but he did find a magical ring of storing, which let the user magically store a weapon inside, and then they could pull it back out as a free action. There was currently a magic sword inside, which the party decided Fiona could get, meanwhile Lucky kept the ring itself. In addition to the magic item, the party also noticed that the dead body was wearing a light blue cloak, and etched into it was the symbol of a compass with a dagger stabbed into it. After they finished looting the corpse, the party continued exploring the building until they came across the attic of the tavern. This room was much more gruesome than the rest of the building. Almost all of the bodies in the tavern had been dragged up into this room and piled into the center. Surrounding the rotting corpses was a large pentagram made of blood, and painted onto the wall behind it was the text, "Your souls already belong to Asmodeus, and I'm here to collect them." The party quickly left the attic and went back down to the ground floor to set up camp for the night. As the snowstorm raged outside, the party all started doing their own things. Stagander worked on filling in his journal with notes about the area they'd explored. Meanwhile, Lucky began searching the building for any secret treasure that the party might have missed. And he did manage to find something, though it wasn't exactly the big box of gold that he was hoping for. Instead, he found a secret room beneath the tavern. Carved into the wall above the door were the words, "Kill the frog with the hammer to enter." Meanwhile, on the main floor of the tavern, Fiona was pacing back and forth while trying to draw schematics into her notebook, but it was slow going. The feeling of being trapped by the storm kept her from being able to fully focus on her project. However, while she was walking around, she noticed something on the wall. There was an old bounty board in the tavern, and even though it was partially charred by whatever fight had happened here, some of it was still readable. Specifically, there was a bounty poster, with the top half burnt away, so only the last few lines of it were visible. It was for some guy named Harvey, who was allegedly extremely dangerous, and there was a 1 million gold piece bounty out for him. However, the more notable part of this was that the bounty was dated over 1,000 years ago, but this paper didn't look that old. No, something strange was going on. Fiona and Stig knew that this had to be a clue about what had happened with the Slipgate event, but they needed more evidence before they could make any theories. Eventually, they all fell asleep and rested through the night as the weather subsided. And now that the snowstorm had passed, the party began their journey home, and after another day of travel, while they were nearing the city, they rolled another random encounter. Creeping up behind the party was a towering beast, a horrific hybrid creature known as an owlbear. The party knew they couldn't fight this head-on, they were already weakened from all of the previous battles, and even at full strength, this beast might be able to beat them in a fair fight. I'll hold it off, you two run towards the city. Already on it, boss! No wait, I have an idea! Just get ready to run on my mark. Stig began to fight the owlbear in one-on-one combat, buying Fiona enough time for whatever her plan was. She combined all of the rest of her material components together into one large shot, and fired it directly at the owlbear. The bomb exploded against the creature's face, and turned one of its eyes into a gory mess. While the owlbear was distracted, the party sprinted as fast as they could, and managed to get back to the city before the owlbear could catch up to them. They'd done it. They'd all survived. Stig immediately went back to the tavern and began mapping out everything they'd found, while the rest of the party started to tell their tale in the tavern for all to hear. However, 2 floors above them, a small devil by the name of Rasmorn began setting up his own schemes, and he was finally ready to kick them off. However, that's gonna have to wait until next episode, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss that when it gets uploaded, and also I have a Patreon if you want to help support the channel. You get access to a few short horror stories I've written, and new ones are occasionally posted every once in a while. Either way, I'll see you in the next video.